And I'd like to ask our three panelists. We have representatives from three prestigious venture capital firms who are here. Sam, Dr. Lou, and Mudit. There you are. So we don't really have any slides here. This is going to be a panel discussion that I'm going to moderate, but you're going to also be contributing to. So have your questions ready. I'm going to ask each of our panelists if they would give a brief introduction to your firm, a little bit about your own background, and then we'll move into the panel discussion. And yeah, hit the button.
I feel like I'm in a courtroom. Hold on. Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Samantha, or Sam Tabone. I'm a general partner at a seed stage fund called Exia Venture Partners that's based here in San Francisco. We mainly do investing in neuro, and what we mean by that is in therapeutics, but also neurotechnology. Specifically, we've done 5 invasive neuromodulation companies that are attacking different therapeutic areas. My background is actually as a chemist and pharmacologist, and one thing I've learned over the years working with drug companies is that, much to my dismay, it's never going to be a one drug, one receptor solution for complex brain diseases. And so very early on, I got turned on to the fact that devices can do a better job of directly modulating problems of the brain. I'm also part-time working with a company called Kernel Neurotech that's based in LA. They're a little too late stage for our fund, but I'm really excited about what Kernel is doing. And yeah, we look at all types of neurotech. So it's not that we're turned off to non-invasive, but we just haven't made a bet there yet. Great to meet you all. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you, Sam. And Dr. Lou, do you want to be next?
Sorry, I'm Lou.
I'm sorry, Lou.
Yeah. So hi, I'm Lou Zhang. I'm the founder and managing partner of Fusion Fund. We're based in Palo Alto, mainly focused on early stage investment in enterprise AI, healthcare, and industry automation. I started from about 10 years ago. So in the past 10 years, we already invest almost 100 companies across the United States with over $500 million for the latest fund. Before I started Fusion Fund, I was a material scientist at Stanford and later built and sold my own medical device company. And for the neurotech, I personally am very passionate about it. And we've been looking at this vertical since 10 years ago, including we made an investment into probably the first brain-machine interface company called Paradigmics back in 2015. I was their first check. They were our first neurotech investment as well. And in the past couple of years, we've been looking at more on the digital therapeutic side, especially for neuro disease. And in the past 1 year, we made a couple investment to company focus on, one recent deal is focused on the microglia cell replacement therapeutic solution for dementia and Parkinson. We also just closed another deal focused on the depression with non-invasive neurotech approach. So we do both invasive, non-invasive, and we really have a strong emphasis on the data layer. So really want to look at, work with the founder, understanding how to also build up their preparatory data library for the application they're building.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Jain, do you want to tell us a bit about
Sure. Jain, founding general partner at Tro Ventures. Tro is a medtech fund that is heavily focused on neuromod and literally leverages our team's experience, very long experience. We've been investing in the space since 2001 when it was around a $200 million market, and it's close to a $10 billion market now. Some really good successful companies overall in bioelectronics and neuromodulation, Inspire, Nevro, Novocure, some of them in bioelectronics, not necessarily neuromod, but you get a feel of the kinds of devices that we have invested in. Personally, my background is I'm a biomedical engineering and I have an MBA in healthcare and finance. Grew up through product development in Guidant and other startups, and then went to work with J&J in their venture capital fund, and then moved over onto the private side of venture investing. I also wear a founder hat. I've started 4 companies over the last 4 years in the neuromod space: Shiratronics, AvivaMed, IviaCare, and Arriva Medical, that have raised close to $175 million. So we are obviously very bullish about the neuromod space overall.
Thank you. And Dr. Jin, do you want to say something about your accelerator as well?
Yeah, it's a virtual accelerator. There's 2 of us, and we have been very productive over the last 5 years. As I mentioned, we have done 4 startups. We work on one project at a time, and then we get it to the point where we can raise Series A. We raise Series A, put in the management team, and then we move on to the next project. Our first company was Shiratronics, which has actually raised a very successful Series B. That's in the chronic migraine space. The company right behind that is Avivo Med, that is in the clinical phase in sleep space. And we have two more companies, and each company is kind of 18 months apart. The next two companies are still in the stealth mode.
Super. Okay, thanks very much. I'd like to ask each of you where you see the neurotechnology market heading in the next, say, 5 to 10 years. What areas are you most excited about? Any particular indications or applications that you think hold the most promise? And we can take this in any order. Sam, do you want to start?
Sure. Also, great to meet you. We're co-invested in Theseus together. Awesome. So, I know neurotech from the early stage vantage point. I think that, one thing I just want to call out is that being at many conferences over the years, it's clear to me that neurotech has a lot to remember and learn from in terms of referencing the medical device community. But also, it's kind of setting off its own precedent and its own investment category in a different way, where different investor archetypes are being drawn to the table, not just the crypto billionaires, but I'm talking about deep tech funds that write significant checks, that take companies from seed to Series A. I actually don't know what the answer to this question is, because it's really dependent on how the access to growth capital pre-commercialization goes for a lot of these companies that are developing either BCIs or other types of neurotechnology. But I do see a clear segmentation between wearables and invasive devices. I am a little bit biased. I think that it's hard as a non-invasive wearable company, whether you're doing therapeutic neuromodulation or something else, to compete with companies that are trying to grab consumer, attention, and basically are maintaining customer acquisition-driven businesses. So I think there will be a clearer demarcation there, and I think that there will be some pretty big winners on the wearable side that are backed by evidence. I just think someone's going to figure out how to, market correctly and compete with these other devices as well. What I'm the most excited about actually have more to do with removing surgical barriers or surgical burdens. So we've invested in companies like Neurobionics, which is a company that's developed an endovascular fiber that can be delivered to the deep brain for deep brain stimulation. And I think, this idea of DBS without a craniotomy sounds like pie in the sky, but I think that for Parkinson's patients who could benefit greatly from DBS, I think it's something like less than 2% of eligible patients actually get DBS because of the surgical barrier. That's one. We're also invested in a company called Vinova, which actually has this intracranial BCI deployment technology that in theory should allow for the deployment of BCIs without the need for major surgery. So I'm excited about that. But I think that there's room for multiple segments to win at the same time. I think it really just depends on how the access to growth capital shapes out. And that's a big unknown for me that I'm hoping to learn from you all today on, and is how that's going to shake out and how the different investor archetypes are going to play well together on cap tables if they do invest in some of these companies. So I'm still trying to figure it out, is the short answer.
Okay, well, keep us posted. Lou, would you like to answer as well?
Yeah, happy to. I think we're probably more bullish about the future of the neurotech in the next 5 years also. I think one critical piece is really just the access to the data and be able to find a better way to analysis, find a correlation of a different biomarker, and be able to utilize it for diagnostic and also therapeutic solution. So for the specific subsector, we're looking at the neural interface for sure. I'm a material science background, so lots of these non-invasive, invasive approach are really giving us a more interface option. The second thing is really just the neuro diagnostic, especially for early diagnostic for neurodegenerative disease. We've been looking at it for a long time. I think lots of the technology are pretty mature right now, ready for large-scale commercialization. Just add on to that, we have a strong focus on AI since 2017 within general healthcare mandate. I published a report on AI in healthcare back in 2017 JP Morgan Healthcare Conference. And this year we just launched AI in Healthcare 2.0. And one of the major focus is really talk about AI combined with a newer tech for digital diagnostic and also for digital therapeutics. I think now with the access to data, be able to really have more comprehensive analysis of the data, we actually have a much better, I would say, more clear and straightforward path for some very accurate solution in the near future. And in terms of the concern you mentioned about the capital market, I agree. I think this is another thing we have to figure out. But the silver lining part is if you look at the exit market, just in general, the merger acquisition market was a large pharma company. They were very fan of buying company focused on oncology in the past, but in the past couple of years has been more focused on the neurology. And we're seeing company got merger acquisition offer over $2 billion, $5 billion, even for year 5, year 7. So even for a company may take much more capital for clinical trial, take a longer time for going through the whole process of clinical trial and the validation data, there's also opportunity for company to have exit with $1 billion mark, which is also a very positive feedback loop for the early stage investment and also early stage innovation.
Thank you. And Madid, we'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
I'll keep it short. I think, cardiovascular was the last 30 years or so in medtech. Neuro is the next 30 years. So that's kind of how we think about it. Our bias is towards therapeutic devices. So next 5, 7 years, therapeutic devices targeting specific diseases. That's where we have seen the most success, Inspire, Exonics, and so forth. So I think we have a bias towards that. Peripheral versus deep brain. Deep brain has had tough time in adoption. So I think still peripheral nerve targets will be the primary ones. And then drug refractory disorders. So I think those are the areas where we see next 5 to 7 years. A little bit different view on the variables. Variables are always tricky, and you have to find not a consumer play, but really a clinical play. We actually have a couple of portfolio companies that are variables, and I'm a very biased guy towards implantables myself, coming from that background. But there are disease states where variables make a lot of sense, and CMS will pay you a lot for those. So I'm very open-minded about variables with a very strong bias towards implantables.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question I'd like to ask has to do with non-dilutive funding. A lot of early stage companies will, in order to keep going, are relying on non-dilutive funding before they're out looking for venture capital investment. And yet, with some of the changes in the new administration, some of the sources for non-dilutive funding, NIH, among NSF, among others, have dried up or at least are lessened. Curious to see what you think the impact would be on any of your current portfolio companies and on any potential new investments and how you would deal with this new situation. Mudit, why don't you start?
Sure. Research, obviously research funding that NIH, NSF get, that impacts long-term science that we invest in ultimately. We are in the business of innovation, but it's the business of innovation. We want to invest in things that are predictable from time and dollar perspective. So NIH, NSF, they do a certain kind of science that ultimately we piggyback on and execute on device development for that. So I think that is going to be impacted. But 2001, I've been in this long enough, 2001, 2008, and then Obamacare happened for MedTech. If you remember, that was going to be at the end all for MedTech. We will adapt, and we'll have new business models come out to make up for some of this. And that, I think, is just generally the evolution of how our industry has adapted in the past. So I stay positive. There's gloom and doom, but no, I think we'll figure a way out.
Thank you for that. Liv? Yes.
Yeah, so we're very supportive to our founder apply for, the non-dilutive funding will actually help them a lot navigate, understanding which source of capital is better to take and also not to make sure they're not really drawing into the high demand requests from the non-dilutive side. Even for the company we just mentioned, they're getting some non-dilutive funding. I think NIH, of course, and there's also lots of ongoing project with DARPA. We have a couple companies working with DARPA, get pretty strong non-dilutive funding source as well. And another good thing is some of the agencies start to do one-on-one matching. For example, we do have a couple companies from Canada. Canadian government just had a new minister of AI. And what they're doing is they're doing one-on-one matching. And we have a couple healthcare companies based in Toronto ecosystem that based on how much we're investing in the seed round, the government can match with the equivalent amount of the non-dilutive funding, even some tax credit. So I think we should definitely help founder, and the founder should be very creative, pursue different source of capital. Non-dilutive is always the one of the best. And also another thing is, I think is really about the early strategic partnership with a large organization. I just joined on the board for the Common Spirit Health Foundation since early this year. You guys know they're one of the largest nonprofit healthcare system in the United States. When they approached me, asked me to join in on the board, I was like, okay, what is the motivation? One side is, of course, the discussion about AI. Another thing is organization like them are thinking about how to work more closely with the startup ecosystem. And this collaboration would including, some of the community building and also potential access to certain level of the non-diluting funding or resources. So I think for founder, it's never been too early to start a conversation with strategic. The good thing is a large corporate, a large company are also thinking about, they have strong anxiety about the new innovation. So they are more open-minded to work with the startup founder compared with a couple of years ago.
Thank you. Yeah. And Sam, your thoughts on this changing landscape in non-dilutive funding?
Yeah, I'm Canadian. I should probably know about this AI minister. I had no idea. Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I think, just thinking about how the new changes have impacted basic research funding like R01s, R61s, other types of grants. I do think that, recently there was something codified into law about focused research organizations as being an alternative to funding these basic research ideas that aren't eligible for or are not getting access to some of these R01s. And I think that's a great alternative. But in reality, a lot of companies that are able to attract early venture capital funding already have a clear path forward. And it's our opinion most times that our founders are only thinking about non-dilutive funding in either like an R&D expansion sense or also just extra gravy on top of the funding that they're getting. So we don't invest. I know it sounds obvious to say, but we don't invest in founders that are dependent on the non-dilutive funding. Of course, like Lou was mentioning, we encourage them to interface with as many sources as possible. I'm a bit biased, but I spend a lot of time with the Blueprint MedTech program that the NIH runs. I'm a grant reviewer there and a mentor as well. And maybe it's confirmation bias, but the NIH seems really interested in neuroscience and neurotechnology still. I mean, practically speaking, the government has been shut down. I was still able to do my review panel pitch to the NIH IC. They were still there. So I think that's a good sign. That doesn't mean that things are going to be slower. I think that applicants are going to, have to wait longer for their grants, and so they're going to need to be more aggressive with fundraising if they're, running a company, especially if they want to explore these other areas aggressively on their own. But I think non-dilutive funding is very positive, and I'm optimistic as well about where it's going.
I'm glad to hear this optimism. Generally, at the Neurotech Leaders Forum, we'll have 1, 2, or 3 representatives from federal agencies, NIH in particular. A lot of people here know Eric Hudak. I know Tom knows Eric well, and Nick Langhals, who've been really instrumental in helping fund a lot of the companies that are now successful, profitable, maybe even acquired. So would have liked to have had some NIH people on hand, but I think we all understand. Maybe we should have got Canadian. I mean, San Francisco got the Snowbirds to perform here instead of the Blue Angels. For those who don't know, the Snowbirds are the Canadian Air Force version of the Blue Angels.
I just want to say, though, there are people internal at the NIH who are responsible for reviewing these grants and managing these programs that are also panicking. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. People are panicking about their jobs. So I think there's a rational take to have, but yeah.
On a related question, not so much on funding, but on regulatory issues, there have been some policy changes. There have also been proposals for policy changes from CMS. So, for instance, with respect to neuromodulation, I'm sure you're familiar with the WISER proposals. We've also recently seen a proposal from some of the local MACs that would basically eliminate reimbursement for some related procedures to neuromodulation. So for instance, ablation and nerve blocks. Now, again, as I mentioned, this is a potentially a short-term gain for PNS because neuromodulation isn't specifically called out. And by the way, this is not final. It's just a proposal. It's not nationwide. It's 24 states, I believe. But a lot of the pain doctors that Jeremy and I spoke to last week at the Business of Pain meeting in Miami were concerned because why would you want to eliminate tools from their quiver or arrows from their quiver? And with respect to some of these procedures, like a nerve block, it often goes hand in hand with a PNS implantation to help verify placement of leads. So it's not necessarily, even though it might be a short-term win, long-term, people are concerned. So the question really for the three of you is, how do you react? How does that impact your funding decisions when you're having to deal with a regulatory environment that's just not certain, for the next 6 to 12 months, let alone the next 3 to 5 years, which you always have to worry about because you don't know what the next administration is going to be like. Anyway, that was a long-winded question, but Lou, why don't you, if you have a thought, or Minit, if you have a thought, go ahead. Anyone?
Sure, thanks. So I think you referred CMS, and we are talking about regulatory, so I'll talk more about FDA per se.
Yep.
So I think it's in all our interest to have really a strong independent FDA for patient safety and for credibility of our products. So we all agree with that. In general, I would say actually FDA has been fairly reasonable and rational to work with. They have asked some additional, biocomp is one area where I see a lot of deviation from guidelines that are out there. Insistence on randomized control trials in an implantable device, which can be very tricky, but that's what we are seeing in the neuromod space overall. But I think just like any other organization within FDA, there's all kinds of reviewers, and it's your good luck or bad luck whom you get stuck with. And that's just any other organization, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But overall, collaborative, I don't see many headwinds on the regulatory side. Reimbursement for certain kinds of devices which haven't had all the strong clinical data is a different story altogether.
Of course. Yes, Luke, go ahead if you have thoughts.
Yeah, so I think I agree with you with the short-term uncertainty and long-term uncertainty, but I don't think it will really impact on our decision on the investment because it will be a new norm. You have to adapt to it and also have better knowledge. So from our side, in-house, we have an expert network dedicated focus on healthcare sector. We actually onboard a new expert mainly focused on FDA. So when our founder, not only, they need to figure out what is going on with FDA, and most of our company are doing AI in healthcare. So this is another layer of a complication. So we want to make sure they are talking to the right people, having the right strategy. One of my venture partner, Rohini, is actually based in DC. She's part-time with us. And before that, she was working in the White House. So she has a strong connection within the FDA ecosystem to really understand, at least to give us some, some of the information in advance to be prepared with our founder. So that's the thing we're doing, putting our effort to help our founder better navigate it, in this like fast changing and evolving ecosystem. But on the other side, I actually feel like now compared with a couple of years ago, I remember when I was an entrepreneur myself, my company was focused on type 2 diabetes, and the reviewer sent over by FDA was a dentist. I was like, oh my God, what are you talking about? That was more than 10 years ago. Compared with that time, now I think actually the quality is much better. They're more engaging. And especially breakthrough device pathway really streamline lots of this potential approval process for the neuromodulation company. And meanwhile, another thing is their understanding of the data and AI is much better compared with a couple of years ago. Actually, the first company got FDA approval for Gen AI-powered medical imaging enhancement is my company called Saddle Medical. It's a company I invested back in 2018. At the time, I still remember how much data, how much communication we have to do in order to educate them, understanding, this is different set of data design, and you don't necessarily need to have so much money thrown into the early approval point. But now I think there's much easy engagement, and also they're much easier to talk to. And they are proactively asking us, and we'll try to understand what is going on, especially with the data layer, AI layer, with the neurotech in general. So I think compared with a couple of years ago, it's getting much better.
Okay, that's good to hear. And Sam, what are your thoughts?
I don't have too much to add, based on what you were saying earlier. So I haven't given those proposals a ton of thought. I don't know how that's going to impact our investing. I think that generally speaking, we try to invest in founders, especially because we're investing so early, that really activate the KOLs and do the market research and the adoptability research early enough so that they have the capability of being agile in their product development lifecycle if they need to make a change in terms of what the use case is. And I know it's a trope both in pharma and in medical devices, but you really need to start with what the reimbursement pathway looks like and what payers are going to pay for. And so we try to screen for founders that have a good understanding there, and if they don't, we try to help them. But yeah, I think that generally speaking, especially with a lot of the companies that have a lot of excitement around them in the neurotech space, I think there's a lot of assuming about what's going to happen on the payer side. And I think what you just mentioned is another flag to say, hey, you need to really just think about this. Even if you think you might change your indication, just think about it. So yeah, that's what I think.
Thank you, Sam. All right, I'd like to open it up now to questions from the audience. Heather will pass the mic. If you could identify yourself before you ask your question. Who has a question for our panel?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. My name is Alejandro Cabolin. I'm one of the founders, CTO of Spark Biomedical. We are doing wearables, both in medical devices, and we have also something that is not medical now. But I'm very interested in your thoughts and what you just, both of you, Sam and Murid said. Lou, I don't know what your thought is about wearables, but what I heard is you said you're biased. And what you said is that you need somebody to figure out what's going on, how to market. I mean, it's a very different approach, and we understand that, the marketing, the device, etc., who designed it. But I'm very interested in understanding what would actually, what signals will actually make you look
Yeah.
into.
Unique access to customers. I think that's really what it is. I was actually going to ask you a question after your presentation about how you fill the top of funnel for your consumer pipeline on the femtech side. I've never worked in the wearable space. I'm not an expert in this space, so I'm probably the wrong person to brainstorm with you. But I think as an investor, if you have a unique sales channel, maybe I know it's unfortunate, but having like people that are, I guess, pseudo influencers associated with the brand, we kind of look for that because that will drown out the noise for the average person who doesn't have any of our experience here today that is looking for a device. That's what we think about. So yeah, I think it's the sales channel if it's a consumer device. However, more and more I'm meeting founders that are, doing this blended approach. And my question, I guess, maybe for you two, but also everyone else is, do you feel like the sequence of productization matters? Do you feel like you need to have a medical device approved first before you go to consumer? Should you get your consumer device out there first? Those are questions I'm still thinking about, honestly.
So I can tell you in our case, we actually went the medical device first. We are all absolute 100% where the data takes you.
Reimbursement.
We have to be, right?
And what are you going to get paid for it?
Right. So, but once you go, so this is the thing, not only the data, but once you go into a more direct to consumer, and we do get influencers, and this is a completely different marketing approach. But once you get to consumer, the volumes are so different, then you might not need anybody to pay for it.
Yeah. I will say we try to, if we look at companies and do due diligence that are doing consumer products, it really helps if they have a medical pipeline as well, just as a hedge, I guess.
Well, we do both. And we actually going to pursue both well, only in the women's health indication, we're pursuing both. On the others, we are strictly medical.
Yeah. Do you want me to add to it? I mean, from our perspective, the way we look at it, for wearables, it's really the barrier to entry is lower, correct? So it really comes down to what kind of moat can you create? Is it gonna be clinical data, or you really have IP if you can? And then it ties to reimbursement ultimately. Are you gonna be clubbed with 10 other TENS devices, which get paid $500? And that's a challenge. And I'll tell you, like, with our personal experiences, I invested in a company called iRhythm, which was a wearable cardiac patch for monitoring. Then there's the consumer equivalent, which is the Cardia or iCardia, I can't remember the name. The Cardia, it's on Amazon, you put it on the back of the phone. Difference is they get paid $79 and it's always a discount on Amazon. We used to get paid $800. So you'll have to sell 10 of those, and selling through a consumer channel, what I don't know is I have to spend $50 million to get 5 million in revenues, or what's the spend to return ratio? Physicians, I understand, medicine, I understand. Consumer, I just don't.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so sorry.
No, just to give you context, we don't touch any consumer. We also never invest anything variable so far. We try to look at a company, but I think I share the same concern as he mentioned.
The cost of acquisition of a customer is something we looked into very, very strong.
Sure.
And we know where we start, and we see how we
Yeah.
move down, making that cost of acquisition lower and lower based on.
And I'm not saying
advertising.
that's anything
No,
wrong. It's just
but-
that.
But it is
our-
something that is
Yeah.
very important to look
Yeah.
into.
I will say, like, there are investors who are more experienced with wearables that are like strategics to have that are amazing. You know, I really see the value in the consumer angle in terms of data collection, but we haven't done any consumer stuff yet on that side either.
And the other thing was.
Just want
IP.
to give you another quick feedback. It's in terms of fundraising, it's not about your product. At least a couple of years ago, I was talking with a founder focused on tech. So they have a device. It's kind of a consumer edge. So for her, she told me her challenge was when she raised money, she went to consumer investor. Investor said, you should talk to the healthcare investor. When she go to healthcare investor, they're like, no, your consumer product, you should go to the other side. So she actually have pretty successful product launch, but has really hard time to fundraising.
All right, who else has, sorry, I'm going to give someone else a chance. Who else has a question for our panel? Couple, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Naveen Rao. I'm going to ask a San Francisco themed question. How do you, what does neuro AI mean to you?
Do this to me.
Thank you.
I will wait.
And that's a good question for everyone.
Mhm.
I don't think anybody has the answer. I don't know what neuro AI is. I don't claim to be an expert, and I'm very clear about my therapeutic device focus. So I'll let people who are AI experts here to respond to that.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, I know AI is a buzzword. Neuro AI is everywhere. Especially in San Francisco. I have a friend visit me yesterday from Boston. He's like, Lou, every single billboard in San Francisco is about AI. Yes, I think, to be honest, because we've been talking about AI in healthcare since 2017, essentially we just look at it as a really effective productivity tool to help us figure out how to handle all this data. Because the neural data is very rich. It's also very scattered. How we really can help understanding better, do better analysis, the correlation, and be able to do early diagnostic and connect it with the personalized treatment plan. I think that's the beauty of apply AI with the neurotech. But on the other side, I think AI cannot solve all the problem. You know, fundamental neurotechnology has to evolve. Another thing is we need a hardware layer as the entrance of the data. If you talk about the value of the data, where do you collect in the data, how to build up your data mode. So for me, we probably focus more on the data layer and less conversation talk about AI. But I think AI is a very effective tool. You should use it, you should apply it, and it will be kind of more like a standardized approach in the future. If you're handling tons of data, AI is a by default application.
Kind of a timely question, given that our next session that Jojo Platt will be moderating is devoted to the quote unquote AI-driven BCI revolution. So you want to you want to throw out buzzwords? Let's put them all together. I'm sorry, Sam, was there something you wanted to say?
Okay. Hi, Naveen. Nice to see you. Thank you for the question. So I really want to believe that neuro AI means something specific, and that is that it's a separately investable category from a venture perspective. But unfortunately, what I see is the term neuro AI being co-opted, which happens quite a bit in the neuroscience space, whether it be through psychedelics or BCIs or whatever it is, as a way to justify asking for funding and for significant valuations for science projects. I'm sorry. I'm just being honest. I think that there is a place for it, though, for sure. And I think that neuro AI is exciting in the sense that you're getting a lot of people thinking about data collection in the right way. What I don't understand fundamentally is how there are specific assumptions being made around the scaling laws for specific types of data modes involving brain data collection that are fueling this neuro AI discourse that to me doesn't make sense. I'm not an expert, but as a venture investor, I don't know if this category is venture backable yet. I really don't. So I don't have the answers. I would love it if someone thinks they do and they could come talk to me later about it because I'm so curious. But that's my honest take on it. Thanks again.
Thank you for being honest. Okay, I think we have time for one more question before the break. Okay, maybe two. We have one more person.
Hi guys. This is Suraj at Action Potential Venture Capital. I have a question for you guys. Kind of actually, I think the last question gets at the heart of what I want to ask here, which is, we know, and you guys all know that medtech is an extremely difficult category to invest in for a variety of reasons. I think it takes a lot of capital time. Once you get commercial, you need massive service infrastructures to even build those companies out. And so I guess the question that I have is like, what can we do? What are the levers that you think new companies should be looking to pull to improve the financial profiles of late stage medtech when these companies get there? Is it operating, kind of managing your operating budget a little bit better once you're commercial? Is it improving pricing, reimbursement? Are there creative ways that we can use the changing technologies of today, whether it's AI or material sciences, et cetera, that differentiate the future of medtech? Because I think, if you look at the public markets now, trading at a 3x revenue is not sustainable for the category. And I think I'm curious how you guys think about neurotech, kind of the next generation of neurotech.
Sure. Good question, Suraj. We are part of the culprits who have had these venture-backed companies bloat with dollars. We are part of the problem. And, it used to be, and obviously the world is a lot more complex now than it was 15 years ago, but it used to be that a PMA device would be somewhere around $70 million to approval. It's approximately $100 million now, but then thereafter. So, I always, as a founder, I'm super sensitive to dilution. Obviously, I'm an investor as well, so I understand on both sides. Our teams, you have some portfolio companies, I have some portfolio companies, and then I have portfolio companies that do it with half the number of people. And the burn is literally half. And they're working on equally complex projects and products through the clinical. So partially it's us as investors and being responsible for our own money and others' money that we have to manage it better. We really don't. And there's a conflict going on in the venture world itself. There's people who have tons of money and they want to deploy all that. If you're a management team, guess what? This person is willing to give me $100, you're willing to give me $50, want me to do the same thing, where will I go? There, isn't it? Insensitive evaluation. So the management team and the investor incentives are misaligned right now. Management team knows they'll get re-upped. So I can raise money at X amount of valuation with all the dilution to whoever it is. So I think it's part of how we have let the ecosystem evolve. That is a challenge. So stage appropriate teams, lean teams. And when I'm saying lean, I'm just not throwing a buzzword, but I truly mean it, because as we talked just before this, we have examples in our portfolios where you see the difference and you see the amount of capital that gets burnt. Obviously, the other thing you do to manage that is bringing together syndicates, and what you're seeing is obviously larger rounds of financing. That's not a bad thing. Larger rounds of financing to accomplish more milestones is a good thing. But larger amounts of financing to get to a crappy milestone and burn through cash is really bad for everyone in the ecosystem. We are not tech VCs. Our companies are capped in med tech. We are never going to have an Amazon. We're never going to have a Facebook. We are capped at, on a good day, at a $3 billion exit, isn't it? So it's all the money that you're going to burn between here and that cap. And I'm talking 3 billion as an exception. Average is 600 million for a PMA on a good day. So it's the buffer between how much you raise and what's the premium left behind. And I think we as investors and we as board members have to manage that a lot better.
I was going to be facetious and just say, stop prosecuting useless IP, which is another way of saying just be very lean with your budget as well. Maybe, again, I don't have experience operating late stage med device companies, but I suspect that keeping the founders in the driver's seat for longer and using those commercial style professional CEOs as advisors instead until you get to that late stage inflection point, and as opposed to bringing them in early as a salaried employee, is a very specific thing that I've seen over and over again. It could be me just cherry picking because I don't have as much exposure there, but keeping the founders in the leadership position for as long as possible, something that I would find interesting. I don't know if that would make a difference budget-wise.
Great. Okay, time for one more question. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Sumit Mahajan from Brainalyze. And my question is related to early stage diagnostics. I heard a few times from the panel. And actually, my question is that for early stage diagnostics, you especially require a lot of patient capital. And I'm just interested in learning about the panel's approach as investors, and also your advice to startup founders like myself.
Yeah, you're right. And access to data isolation challenge is always the key for early diagnostic. But the good news is, as I mentioned, lots of the organizations are more open to share the data with the startup company. For example, there's over 60 hospital systems in the United States right now are deploying with federal computing. Federal computing allow them to, potentially share their data without move or transfer the data, so there are no privacy compliance concern. And the startup company can potentially work with that, access to their clinical data, and to be able to, if you want to train a vertical AI model for certain vertical diagnostic solution, it is possible. And including the organization I mentioned, the Common Spirit Health Foundation, Common Spirit Health in general, they're also talking about potentially how to do some governance layer in order to allow the accessibility of the data in their organization. So I think early partnership will be really critical, but even build on top of that, founders should always think about, for your solution you're offering, whether you can have a sustainable platform, continue acquiring data as well. So enhance your data mode and essentially fine tuning and also go beyond from there at the early stages is pretty promising.
Okay. Well, I believe we are out of time, so I want to thank all three of our panelists